Hello and welcome to The Real Franchise, a video series designed to deliver real information, real answers, and real insights into franchising. This series is brought to you by James Home Services Australia. I'm the CEO, and Justin is one of our owners and our head of new businesses. Together, we're going to tackle all of the big topics: unscripted, unplanned, and unfiltered. No sales, no fluff. We're just going to give you the information straight up. Today's topic is all about the stigma of franchising. Let's go there. Let's bust the myths that franchising is the worst thing in the world. We have both heard it so many times. Justin, as our head of new businesses, you are the person who walks those potential new business owners in our network through the information and onboarding process. I engage with the industry frequently, and I am constantly hearing that stigma and the stereotype. And if you've clicked onto this video, then I'm hoping that you've heard it too, and you're open to just having a conversation about why this stigma exists and also busting some myths around it. Because frankly, in 2024, there's a lot of reasons why the stigma is very outdated, and we just need to have a chat about that. Justin, I'm going to throw to you first. I mentioned before, you hear it at the coalface. As our head of new businesses, your role in our company, as well as being a part owner, is actually taking every single person who makes an inquiry about joining our network through an information process. And if at the end of that, they choose to commit to becoming a franchisee, then you kick off the onboarding process with them. I'm positive you must hear quite frequently people having fears about joining a franchise network, or reservations, or just being unsure and a little bit uncomfortable because of the stigma and the stereotype that is attached to franchising. What sorts of things do you hear at the coalface?
Well, it starts right in the very first conversation. When I first call someone back, it's almost like, for most of the calls that I do with people, you can just sense this real fear. It's like they're playing with a snake, and, so what's the catch and what's this and what's that? And as this is why we do this long information journey, so that people can, we're transparent. They can talk to anyone. There's no secrets. And you just gradually see these walls come down. But there's that old saying, where there's smoke, there's fire, all right? And the challenge I think our whole industry has had over the last 5 to 10 years particularly is there's a lot of smoke, right? And the challenge is people to get actual information. Like, I can remember 20 years ago, colleagues and friends of mine that had franchises, looking at franchises, family and friends just going, and myself included, going, wow, that's awesome, go for it, you're going to do awesome, you'll make millions, And that, through the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, that was the public perception, by and large, about a franchise. If you've got a franchise, what's that? Yeah, it's celebrated. Now, if you go to your family and friends and say, I'm looking at buying a franchise or joining a franchise, you'll probably get a very different reaction.
So why is that? Why is it? Because it seems to have changed on a dime. Media coverage nowadays for the franchising industry is by and large quite negative, which is really unfortunate given the role that franchising plays in our economy. And we can get to that later. But why do you think that perception has changed? Because you're right, 20 years ago, the industry was celebrated. It was revered. You were a savvy businessman or businesswoman. If you were making a decision to join a franchise network, people thought that, that was a really good decision. Why has it changed so much in really such a short space of time?
Well, what the country saw happen, and I think it was the same in the US, is because franchises were so successful, and there's good reasons for that, and we'll talk about that, why franchises are successful, all sorts of people jumped on the bandwagon. And you saw through the 80s and 90s just this plethora of franchises start in Australia where everybody jumped in and tried to franchise their business without the understanding of what it actually is that makes a franchise succeed. So sadly, what we saw happen, particularly in the hospitality industry, is there were a lot of franchises that were set up that had, massive infrastructure costs and demands on the franchisee for, fit outs and refit outs and all these sorts of things, and high shop leases and those sorts of costs. And then the fee structures were just unworkable. And what we saw was, and this has been in the press, and this is what people have seen, and this is what is factual, that some of these franchises there was no way a franchisee could build a successful business. You could be working your guts out doing everything and you still lost your home. And that's what happened. And that's what factually is out there. And sadly, it was a group, like a number. And the government stepped in, and I guess, you as our CEO might be able to talk a bit more to this. The government brought in this thing called the Franchise Code of Conduct that every franchise has to abide by. And I might throw over to you to just talk about how did that address some of those things?
Yeah. What we really see in franchising and what the law found what the law found when it started to have these sort of cases presented out of the 80s and the 90s of these franchisors who had what essentially summarizes exactly what you described is that people built great businesses and then they saw a business opportunity for expansion using the franchising model. And the franchising model is the most powerful business model available to us in the world, on the planet, full stop. You can't change my mind. It is. And what happened was, because of that, a lot of people got on board, and a lot of people got on board that maybe, as you indicated, didn't really understand the importance of setting it up correctly. So what we saw was an awful lot of people failing, or a lot of people not being supported adequately in their franchise businesses. Of course, what that contributed to was an increase in legal cases against franchisors. Now, when you see an increase in legal cases all around the same topic, the government goes, oh, that's interesting. That industry over there doesn't really seem to be doing the right thing by the people in the industry. Should we regulate? So the government stepped in and said, this is currently an unregulated industry. It was a free-for-all. Franchisors could do anything they pleased. There were no rules, no regulations, no parameters. So franchisors were left to their own devices, and it was up to individuals as to whether they set the network up in a way that actually benefited their broader network, or set the network up in a way that potentially just benefited their own interests. Government stepped in at a point and said, no more. We need to protect the smaller party. We need to protect the mum and dad business owners who are putting their lives and their houses and their families on the line to join your network. And honestly, as a CEO of a franchise network, I think that's sensible. I think there should be protection for the smaller party who doesn't have access to the same level of experience and intelligence and understanding of the industry that those in the industry every single day of their lives have. So the government implemented what we now know to be the Australian Franchising Code of Conduct. And the Code of Conduct has gone through a number of different updates and iterations over the years. But essentially what it is, it's our rule book. And it's a document that, frankly, I know like the back of my hand. I've read it more times than I would like to admit to you. But it's our rule book. It's what we have to do to take care of our franchisees. Now, there are franchisors out there who are dead against a lot of the code and what it stands for, and they will fight tooth and hammer to tell you that it just simply adds red tape and barriers to business success in our industry. And frankly, I think those are the franchisors that maybe need the code the most. I don't have an issue with the code. I've never had an issue with the code. I actually think that the code is adequately providing protection to the smaller party, to the franchisee in this case. And frankly, as I read the code, all it is, frankly, most of it is common sense. This is how you should take care of someone who has invested in your network, anticipating success and results because of that. It's just a 101. It's just common sense. It's just, this is how you take care of someone who's invested in you. So the government introduced the Code of Conduct, and it's our rule book. That's the easiest way to describe it. for anybody listening to this, there's nothing complex about it. And it just sets a standard of behavior and actions that your franchisor is legally bound to follow. Simple. That's all it is. It does provide protection for the smaller party. It is important. I don't believe it adds unnecessarily significant amounts of red tape to the process. What it does is it adds protections, it adds checks and balances, and it keeps people honest. And frankly, if you're already honest and you're already operating on the right side of franchising history, then the code is nothing to be concerned or worried about. And for us, the code is nothing to be concerned or worried about. It simply acts as a guide. But if you're steering your ship with a strong moral compass, the code, you're not ever really going to find yourself on the wrong side of it, to be honest.
Yeah. So that's one of the big reasons I think that, if people have that bit of fact versus, the terrible horror stories really are from 20 years ago or so that the code was introduced to address. And like you said, the code fundamentally at its grassroots says that we have to at all times act in good faith to one another. And that's, our previous episode, we were talking about the moral compass that we use to drive, James. I mean, that's how we do business anyway.
Yeah.
So whether there was a code of conduct, that's why it doesn't really change the way we do business, because that's the way we do business.
There's nothing in our network that we do because of the code of conduct. Everything in our business that we do is because that's the right way to take care of people who have invested in our network. That's the right way to grow businesses in our network. That's just the right way to treat other human beings.
Yep. And sadly, and I must admit, this frustrates the living daylights out of me, that stigma is so many people that would do awesome in this business have that implanted. I constantly am monitoring our Facebook advertising and obviously people comment on that and you get all sorts of comments. And there was one just the other day where someone going, why would you join a franchise? These guys take over half of your money. And it's like,
that's so untrue.
Exactly. Like our fees are a percentage. I would say, look, be more concerned, in my opinion, more concerned of a network that has set fees. Our network, we charge a small percentage. So the only way we can really make money is by helping you make money.
Yeah, that's right. And it's, those individuals. And look, and I'm sure that person that commented, it's come from somewhere, right? It's maybe a lived experience. And if it is, goodness, I'm sorry that that's been their experience, that they've not had a great one with a franchise network. But 9 times out of 10, what we find is it's not someone's personal experience.
Exactly.
And it's not even an experience of a family member or an auntie or an uncle or a friend or a colleague. It's actually just a feeling that they have gathered. And it's a combination of, media coverage or stories passed around third, fourth, fifth hand at backyard barbecues, and it is, I'd say it's frustrating because it's not really a personal frustration and it's not really a frustration of our business, but it's unfortunate for the people who have that view that is their set view. And sometimes I wish I could just say, just give us 10 minutes. We're human beings. We just want to operate a network that does the best thing by our franchisees. We just want to help you grow businesses. We're not out here to try and steal all your money. We're not out here to try and stitch you up. We're not trying to screw you over. We're not trying to end your life. We're not trying to put a stop to your family aspirations. None of that. Actually, we want all of that for you. And we know we can support you to get it through our system and through our network. I sometimes wish I could just have 10 minutes with someone to say, hey, I'm a human being. I had the same fears when I joined this network that you have now. And actually, 4 years on the inside of the devil has taught me that actually we steer this ship with a strong moral compass. And we do that because that's the right thing to do, not because the code tells us to do it, but because we already know that's the right thing to do. And look, there's a place to acknowledge that there are still franchisors out there who make unfortunate decisions, whether it's knowingly or by mistake. Things happen and experiences are had in franchising that aren't great for franchisees. That's worth acknowledging. And those things still happen, which which is why it's so important that if you're going down the road of investigating a franchise network, you've got to do your due diligence. You've got to ask all of the questions. You've got to be looking for those red flags. And if you see one pop up, you've got to dive deeper and you've got to trust your gut. And if you're not feeling confident with the information and the presentation that a network is giving to you, trust that. Then maybe there's a good reason for that. But I will say also, it's very valuable in life and also in business to have an open mind. And franchising is enormous in this country. I don't actually think that a lot of people have an understanding of just how significant our industry is and the contribution that it makes to our economy. So if you think about the money that franchising generates through its businesses and through the model, through the whole franchising industry, in Australia, every single year, the franchising sector contributes around $180 billion to our Australian economy. And that's a big number. So to put that in perspective for anybody listening, that's more than our agriculture and our mining sectors combined. So you think about what drives our economy here in Australia, you think agriculture and mining. You know, we're taught that we are built on the back of agriculture and mining. Little old franchising over here with a terrible, terrible stigma attached to us and with so many people fearful of us, we actually eclipse the contribution that those two other industries make to the economy every single year. In that contribution, there are around 1,100 franchise networks. There are around 90,000 small businesses enabled through the franchising model. So that's 90,000, mums and dads that own businesses and are supported to own their businesses by franchise networks. Mm-hmm. And there are over 650,000 people who have jobs in the franchising sector. So, our industry, which has attracted over the years, a pretty shocking reputation, is such a significant contributor. You take that out of our Australian economy and we fall over pretty quickly. So, I absolutely acknowledge that the horror stories have been real in the past and there continue to be franchise networks that maybe aren't focused in the right places. But the majority of us are out here just trying to build healthy businesses in our networks. And the majority of us genuinely believe in the power of franchising to enable the power of small business in our economy. And small business is really important. Small businesses in this country is actually what we're built on. We are built on small businesses. 98% of the businesses in Australia are small businesses. We're built on the back of small business, and franchising is an industry that actually supports small business.
Right.
So we are an incredibly important player in the puzzle that is our Australian economy.
Yeah, I love having the discussion because I have it often with people who are so skeptical. Yes, I'm looking at starting my own business. I'm looking at going out on my own, or I'm looking at doing a franchise, but I'm really thinking I'm going to do my own thing. Yeah. Convince me why I would even look at a franchise, right? It's that sort of conversation. And if you're listening to this and you want to have that conversation, put through an inquiry, because there are good facts. There's reasons franchises are so successful. Look at Macca's. I can't stand their food, but are they a successful business? But it's their selection criteria. It's almost impossible to get one because they are so sought after and successful.
Yeah.
And there's reasons for that. It's not just a magical thing that these businesses are successful. There's people, when they're throwing these comments to me about why would I do a franchise, I just sort of say, well, walk into any shopping centre. Almost every shop you look at in any shopping centre, nearly all of them are franchises. Why?
Yeah.
If there's such a terrible thing, why?
Yeah, that's right.
There's reasons that's, like you said, I come from an agricultural background, right? That stat that you shared with me recently, that blew me away, And it's interesting because I was just thinking as you were talking before, farming and agriculture has a stigma attached, similar stigma. Farmers are destroying our environment. It's like, well, if you actually go and work on a farm or live on a farm, you will see that most farmers love their land more than you ever possibly could.
Mhm.
You know, like, and they do so. Yes, there's the bad few that give same in franchising. It's interesting, the same parallels. But
It's in every industry, isn't it? You know,
yes,
there's a common thread, which is in every industry, in every sector, in every workplace, in every part of society, there's always a small handful that choose the wrong path, that make unfortunate decisions, that don't do the right thing, that don't stick to the rule book, that don't act with integrity. There's always that small portion in everything in life. You will find that small portion. Franchising is no different. You will find that small portion, but what that also means is that the other 99.99999% of the industry is out there just trying to support our businesses to grow successful businesses in their local communities. You know, franchising is successful for a lot of reasons, and I think that I think that's a great topic to get into in a lot of detail in another episode. Is why is franchising so successful? Because there are an awful lot of reasons, but the number one reason that it's successful is, and I'm going to use an analogy to explain this, and it's pertinent because right now as we're recording this, we're on the tail end of the 2024 Paris Olympics. And the analogy is everyone starting on the start line of that 100-meter race for gold has the same goal. They want to win. So, but the person that wins, it comes down to having great systems and processes, having great trainers, having a great coach, having a great diet, having a great routine, being consistent in implementing all of those things. The winner is the one with the best systems and processes. Everyone has the same goal. So it's not the person with the best goal that wins. It's the person with the best systems and processes.
Exactly.
In franchising and in any small business, right, it's the same. Franchise network, not a franchise network. It's the same. You start your business with the same goal as everybody else who's ever started a business. No one starts to fail. No one in history has started a business with the goal of failure. We all start with the goal of winning, of being successful, of building a successful, sustainable business. The people who actually get there, the people who actually succeed in business are not the ones with the biggest, most aspirational goals. They're the ones with the best systems and processes. And how that makes franchising successful is the very foundation of franchising is having systems and processes that, when implemented, work.
Yeah, exactly.
That is indeed the entire model of franchising summarized in one sentence. Franchising is systems and processes that work when implemented. Full stop.
Very good. That's awesome.
Yeah. This is quite a confronting conversation, really, isn't it? You know, particularly to be in the industry, facing what is said about us so often. So I hope for anybody listening that just maybe we have challenged your thinking in a healthy way. I hope that you feel that this has been constructive. I hope that you feel that this has been informative. I hope that you don't feel we're just sitting here trying to justify why a franchise network is worthwhile, because maybe for you it's not. You know, maybe there are other business models out there that for you as an individual listening are a better fit for you. And that's okay. Franchising is not for everyone. And one of the wonderful things about our network is that if you make an inquiry with us and through conversations and through our journey of getting to know you, if we actually get to a point where genuinely we feel like what you're looking for is not what we offer, we'll tell you. We'll just be upfront with you. We're not going to try and sell you a franchise if actually we don't think that can achieve for you what you're looking for. And I hope that through this video series, we can send that message. You know, we're not out here for numbers for the sake of numbers, growth for the sake of growth, sales for the sake of sales. We're not out here to fuel the stereotype. We're out here actually trying to do the opposite. We're actually out here trying to prove that franchise networks make a really significant contribution to our economy. We have a very small small role in that, but we have a big responsibility. And the responsibility is to walk the walk and talk the talk, is to do the right thing by the people who invest in our network and who are in our care. That's really our biggest goal.
Yep.
So we might leave this episode here. If you've liked it or found it helpful, leave us a like or a comment. It really supports our channel and helps YouTube to know that the content we're sharing is relevant and can share it with more people like yourself who might have an interest. If there's a topic you'd like us to discuss, then leave us a comment below and we'll get to it. And thank you for spending 20 minutes of your day with us. And we hope that you listen in for the next episode of The Real Franchise.